Hello YouTube reloaders. Thanks for watching. Hornady Loader here. My standard disclaimer, I am not an employee of Hornady Manufacturing, nor do I have any interest, financially or otherwise, in the sale of Hornady products. I've been reloading for almost 35 years, and for the last 20 years I've been using Hornady equipment almost exclusively, hence the name Hornady Loader. The Hornady logo is a registered trademark of Hornady Manufacturing, Grand Island, Nebraska. Today's video will be an examination of Hornady's Camlock case trimmer. Now I realize there's several videos already on YouTube that have reviews and tutorials on this particular trimmer, but if you bear with me, I think you'll find some information in this video that you won't find in the others. Now the Camlock case trimmer is basically a lathe style trimmer. Many companies have one of these just like it. The Camlock case trimmer has some nice features. To really appreciate some of those features and some of the improvements they've made, we can take a look at Hornady's old deluxe trimmer, is what they called it. The frame for the deluxe trimmer was actually made for them by Pacific Tool. It even has the word Pacific cast right into the frame. With the Camlock case trimmer, they changed the frame. I'm not sure who makes it for them, if they make it themselves, but they've standardized on this particular frame. For example, take a look at their concentricity gauge. You'll see that it has exactly the same frame, just with some modifications so that it can be used as a concentricity gauge. It has slightly different spindles on both sides. Same frame. It's been milled down here in the middle for this plate, but essentially it's the same frame. They have a new product for 2015 called the Hornady neck turn tool, which also uses the same frame. You can see that it's the same frame with slightly different spindles, and there's the neck turning tool attached to the center of the frame. So it appears that Hornady has settled on a standard platform for their lathe style tools. I'm kind of looking forward to that neck turn tool when it comes out in another month or two. Let's look at a couple other the differences between their old deluxe trimmer. Obviously the new frame is larger than the old one. Makes it a little bit easier to operate, and the handle is larger. The whole thing is just easier to operate with the larger size. On the left, the old case trimmer used this knob here to act as a shell lock, and you insert your shell holder by unscrewing the shell lock and then screwing it back in. On the right, the cutter spindle is not adjustable. It's just got an E-clamp or an E-ring on the spindle here, and it goes in that far and that's it. All the adjustments are made on the spindle on the left here. It makes it very difficult to adjust, you know, if I just need a couple thousandths of an inch, it's very difficult to do that by hand with the spindle on the left. Okay. One thing I did like about the old frame was they have a little storage area here for your trimmer pilots, but that's okay. I've mounted mine to a board, put some rubber feet on the bottom, and I've added a storage area here for all my trimmer pilots and other accessories. Okay, so the new trimmer, much better than the old. Let's go over some of the features of the new trimmer. The Camlock trimmer gets its name from this device right here, which they call their Camlock, or it's basically a spindle, and you put your shell holder into this piece here and screw that back over the spindle lock, or the shell lock that's on the left hand spindle here. Then, in order to put a case in the trimmer, you simply put it in your shell holder and you turn the trimmer lock or the shell lock, and that locks the case in place. Now whenever I put a case in there, the first time I start loading a new or start trimming a new caliber, I make one additional adjustment in that I spin turn the spindle here so that when it's locked, the arm here, the lock arm, is right about there. That way I just turn it a quarter turn and I can remove my case. This way I don't end up with having to reach underneath it to operate the spindle lock or the shell lock arm. Quarter turn that way, locks it in. Quarter turn that way, removes it. Very simple, a lot easier than the old version. That's what they call their cam lock, essentially. It's not really a cam the way most people think of a cam. To me, a cam is an oblong kind of cylinder looking thing where when it turns it would lock the shell into position. All you're really doing here is screwing and unscrewing this end piece, and when you screw it in or you turn it that way, it's screwing it onto the spindle here, which brings the shell lock shaft in contact with the head of the case, this here, and locks it in place. When you turn it the opposite direction or counterclockwise, it essentially unscrews it from the spindle and the shell lock, and that allows you to remove the case. So it's really just a screw, not a cam in the traditional sense. It's a bit of a misnomer. I do want to mention one thing about these shell holders. I've seen a lot of complaints about the fact that only Hornady shell holders can be used with the cam lock trimmer. The old one you could use other manufacturers' shell holders. This one, the shell lock shaft here is a larger diameter, and the hole in the shell holder matches that diameter. It's a little bit larger than the other manufacturers. The other manufacturers have a smaller hole in the middle, and it won't fit around this shell lock shaft. There is actually a reason why they do that, and we'll get to that in a little bit here. But I have seen some complaints or some comments about the fact that only Hornady shell holders can be used in this, and it's correct. Only Hornady shell holders can be used in the cam lock trimmer. Okay. On the right hand side, the cutter spindle is now adjustable. It's adjustable through this adjustment knob here. This is the lock ring, or the lock knob, and this is the adjustment knob. When you first get set up to trim your cases, to center this, I bring the lock knob all the way back until it touches the handle, and I bring the adjustment knob back all the way until it touches the lock ring. Then I move them both together 3 full turns. 1, 2, 3. And what that'll do is that'll put the adjustment knob roughly in the center of the adjustment range. That way no matter what I need to do as far as adjustments in or out, I have plenty of room to adjust in both directions. Okay, so when you first start up, you want to do that 3 turns away from the handle. The trimmer pilot is put in by loosening this set screw in the cutter, and you can put whatever trimmer pilot you need. Now I'm going to be doing 223, so I'm going to use pilot number 1, which is the correct trimmer pilot for 223. I've got a little chart here taped to the board it tells me which trimmer pilot to use for which bullet sizes. Okay, at this point we have the correct shell holder installed, the correct trimmer pilot. We've centered our adjustment knob, and we've adjusted our shell lock arm to the correct position on top here. The only thing left to do is to adjust the trimmer so that it cuts cases to the appropriate length. Now, there's a few ways to do this. We'll talk about a couple of them. If we have a shell or a case, measure it first. See where it's at. This one is 1.766, so it's a little bit long. So we'll use this to adjust our trimmer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen the left-hand spindle. I'm going to go ahead and put the case in. And I'm going to move the cutter spindle all the way in and hold it there. Then I'll move the left-hand spindle so that the case is until the case goes into the trimmer pilot, or the trimmer pilot goes into the neck of the case. And then I'm going to tighten the spindle lock, and then I'll tighten the case. Okay, so at this point the trimmer is adjusted for 1.766. I need to move the cutter in just a little bit to cut the case down to 1.750. Now the way to do that is I'm going to loosen my lock nut here, and I'm going to turn the adjustment knob to move the cutter in just a little bit. Now, one full turn of the adjustment knob will adjust the cutter by 5/100ths of an inch. Not 5/1000ths, it's 5/100ths. So I don't need to go anywhere near that far. I only need to go 16/100ths of an inch. So if I turn the adjustment knob clockwise, that's going to screw the adjustment knob in this direction toward the left, and what that'll end up doing is pulling the cutter back. So I don't want to do that. I want the cutter to move to the left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the adjustment knob just a little bit counterclockwise. I'll go just a little bit, maybe a 1/16 of a turn. Then I'm going to snug up the locking nut. I don't want to jam it just yet. I want to just snug it up just enough so that the adjustment knob won't move. Then I'll reinsert the trimmer pilot and cutter into the neck of the case. I'll tighten the case down. Let me just make a note of this real quick. I see a lot of reloaders do this wrong. What they do is they put the case in, then lock it, and then they put the trimmer pilot through the neck of the case. What that does makes it possible, in fact it's probable, that the case is just a little bit crooked on there. And what happens then when you start cutting is it'll cut the neck at an angle. So what you want to do, the correct way to do this, is put the case in. Don't tighten it yet. Leave it loose. Then put the trimmer pilot into the neck of the case and allow the neck of the case to square up on the four cutters here. That'll get the case perfectly straight and lined up properly. Then you tighten the shell lock. So case in, trimmer pilot in, then tighten. That's the correct order to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut. Now I found the best way to do this is put my palm of my hand on the handle here. It makes it a little easier than using my fingers like this. I'm just going to go ahead and cut, and you can feel when it's done. It'll start spinning really freely. It won't have any tension to it. You'll also probably be able to hear it when it stopped stop cutting, or when it's cut as far as it's going to go. And looks like I didn't get anywhere there. I'm like 1.766. So I'm going to adjust it just a little bit more. So I loosen my lock nut. Going to turn it counterclockwise. A little less than 1/8 of a turn. Snug my lock nut up. Got my case in loose. Allow it to square up on the cutters. Tighten the case. And then start cutting. Now I'm just going to do it a little bit at a time. It's always possible to cut it a little bit shorter. But if you get it too short, you can't add material to the case. So it's best to do it very slowly, just an increment at a time, or a very small increment at a time, until you get down to where you need to be. Now we're down to 1.763. So I'm going to adjust it a little bit further. Lock nut. A little less than 1/8 of an inch again, or 1/8 of a turn rather. Snug the lock nut. Case in. Pile it in. Lock the case. And do it again. There, it stopped cutting. Let's see where we're at. 1.761. See, I'm just going very, very small increments until I get to where I need to be. A little bit further. Remember, I'm turning the adjustment knob counterclockwise, which moves it back on the cutter spindle, which allows the cutter spindle to go in further so that the blades will move to the left. I get a little more cutting. Let's see where we're at. 1.758. Almost there. A little bit more. Actually moving it less than I did last time because I only need to go 3/1000ths of an inch. .752. Getting there. Just going to go ever so slightly on the adjustment knob this time. And I've actually gone too far. 1.747. So I've got a short case. Now I usually, when I have a short case, I put them into a short case box, and I load those up for plinking and sheeting cans, things like that. For my accuracy loads, for my competition stuff, I never trim down less than the trim length. Okay, so I'm going to move it back up just a little bit. Now, one thing I want to note about the adjustment knob here, it's micro adjustable. It is not a micrometer. I've seen some people complain that, you know, Hornady claims this is a micrometer, and it is not. And Hornady's website makes it a little confusing. In one spot they call it micro adjustable, which it is. You can adjust for 1/1000th of an inch with it, but it is not a micrometer. A micrometer would allude to the fact that there's some kind of gauge or scale on here so that you can record where it's at on the cutter spindle, so that the next time you want to trim for this particular caliber, you can get it, you can use the micrometer or the indications on the shaft here to move the adjustment knob to the appropriate spot, and then it's quicker to adjust that way. This is not a micrometer, and Hornady does use the word micrometer on their website in one spot. One spot it says micro adjustable, another spot they kind of imply that it's a micrometer. It is not a micrometer. Okay, so let's see where we're at with this case. I'm going to re-zero my caliper here. See where we're at. 1.770. Remember, when you measure a case with a caliper, to twist the case a little bit. Try to get it down to the smallest number here that you can. Sometimes the case will go on there a little bit cockeyed, and you get a false reading. So if you spin it just a little bit, here we're at 1.771. So I've already moved my adjustment knob back. Let's see what we get. There you go. You probably heard that. You can tell when it's done cutting. It's easier to feel it. .759, and of course I dropped my case. I'll just grab another here. I'm going to adjust it out a little bit more, like 1/8 of a turn. And I just keep doing this until I end up with the case at the correct length. .750. Oh, 49.5. .750. There we go. 1.749. Just a little bit off. I'll adjust that later. Now, once you have a case cut to the appropriate length, you can use that as a reference case. Usually what I'll do is I'll put a label on it telling me what length it is, and then I'll put that away. So the next time when I need to cut cases for this caliber, I'll put case in, my reference case in. I'll move the cutter spindle all the way to the left. Then move my spindle until the neck is squared up on the cutting blades. Tighten my spindle, and then I'm adjusted for the proper length. So my next case, I can just start cutting cases then, and I'll know they'd be at the correct length. Okay. Now, doing it the way we just did it, we start out at whatever length the case is. Like in this case it was, I think, 1.771 or something like that. And then we have to incrementally go in just a little bit each time. Now, Hornady also makes this little doodad. And what it is, it's a case length gauge, essentially. But if you measure it, say here's the 223 Remington scale right here, you'll see that it's actually 1.635, which is kind of short of the trim length, which is 1.750. What they did is they are using this, and you need to add the little bit of space here between where the head of the case is and where the top of the shell holder is. That is why you need to use Hornady shell holders. If you use a different manufacturer's shell holders, this distance might be a little bit different, and this little guy wouldn't work. Let me show you how this guy is used. what I'm going to do, and this will give me a starting point. It doesn't necessarily give you exactly 1.750, but it will give you a starting point so that you can eliminate some of the adjustments over and over to get where you need to be. What you want to do is you take this edge of the device and put it up against two of the blades on the cutter. If you're on one blade, this thing can move back and forth. So you need to make it on two so that it's squared up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my cutter spindle in. I'm going to put my adjustment device on here. Get it lined up with two of the cutters. The 223 Remington level is right here, so I'm going to move my spindle until the top of the shell holder connects with that ledge on the device. And what that should do is give me a starting point for 223 Remington. Now if we take another case here, let me re-zero. This one's 1.763. So I'm gonna put the case in, trimmer pilot in, lock it up, and cut. .760. Let me readjust this here. Must not have had it on the cutters properly. So, cutter all the way in. Level it on two of the cutters. Bring it in till the shell holder is on 223 Remington. And tighten it up. Okay, let me try that again. There we go, it's cutting a little bit there. Let's see where we're at. .752. So this got me pretty close. I only have to make a very small adjustment now to get it down to 1.750. So this little guy will get you, within a couple thousandths, and then you can adjust it manually for the rest of the way. But that device is, I think, why Hornady made it so that you can only use Hornady shell holders. Other manufacturers' shell holders won't work with their adjustment device. Okay. Now you also want to, once you cut a case, you need to, of course, chamfer and deburr it. We'll talk about that in another video. But I like to chamfer and deburr them, especially if I'm going to make a reference case, or if I want to make sure that I've got my trimmer at the right length, and remeasure, just so that we, now you can see, once I've deburred it and chamfered it, I'm actually down to 1.750 thereabouts. Yeah, 1.750. If there's a burr or something on the top of the neck after you've done the trimming, your caliper may lay on top of that and you'll get a bad reading. So you can see that I actually went down by a couple thousandths after I chamfered and deburred the case. Now then I can take this case and I can use it as a reference for the next time that I want to trim cases in 223. I can use this to adjust. Put it on there. Oops. Tighten my spindle. Tighten my case. And now I'm adjusted for 1.750. And then I can start trimming the rest of my cases. Okay. Okay, let me talk about some of the accessories for the cam lock case trimmer. One nice accessory is the power adapter. Uh-oh. Here it comes. Wait for it. Wait for it. This is a Hornady loader. Stupidity alert. I've seen a lot of criticism and bad reviews on this the Hornady power adapter for their case lock cam lock case trimmer. Specifically, that it will snap at this spot right here. It's a very thin piece of metal there where it changes from the 1/4 inch shank to the threads that go into the bolt. Now, almost in the same breath, in the next sentence of their complaint, they say, I was using my drill and it only went around a few times and boom, it snapped right off. Well, if you look at Hornady's website, and if you actually read the instructions that come with the power adapter, it specifies that it's supposed to be used with a battery-powered screwdriver. The power adapter for your cam lock trimmer allows you to use a battery-operated screwdriver instead of muscle power to drive your trimming. The adapter replaces a hand crank for easy operation. Here's a fun fact. A drill is not a battery-operated screwdriver. Okay, now just so we're on the same page, this is a battery-powered screwdriver. This is a drill. Battery-powered screwdriver is light. This one weighs about 12 ounces. It spins relatively slow, has relatively low torque. The drill, this one weighs 5 pounds, spins very quickly, and has a huge amount of torque. Now what happens if you don't have the power adapter and your screwdriver lined up perfectly with the cutting spindle? What'll happen is it'll tend to bind. Now with a battery powered screwdriver, with its low torque and its low weight, it'll kind of snap back into position. The power adapter is perfectly capable of supporting the weight of a battery powered screwdriver. So it'll kind of snap back into position. It's not really a big problem. With a drill, if it starts to bind, if you're not perfectly lined up with the cutter spindle and it binds, the drill doesn't care. The drill is spinning so fast and has so much torque behind it and so much weight behind it that it'll just keep right on going. And the power adapter doesn't have the strength to support this kind of weight and this kind of torque to snap it back into alignment with the cutter spindle. So it'll snap right off. Okay? This is a battery-powered screwdriver. This is a drill. Now, I'm sure there's some chucklehead out there who will say, well, they should have designed it better, made it out of hardened steel, made it better so I could use it with my drill. Well, that may be. Maybe they could have made it a little more hefty here. But it's irrelevant. The fact remains, they did not. They designed it specifically for a battery-powered screwdriver, not for a drill. So use this, don't use this. Now, I'm sure that same chucklehead out there is going to say, well, this is battery powered and I can drive screws with it, so technically it's a battery powered screwdriver. No, it's not. Don't be a chucklehead. Don't use this. Use a battery powered screwdriver. Okay, at any rate, to use the power adapter, you put it into your battery powered screwdriver, you unscrew the handle, screw the power adapter onto your cutter spindle, attach your battery-powered screwdriver. And now you can use this to spin the cutter spindle. And it's kind of a handy thing. I use it quite often if I'm doing a lot of cases. I'll use this, and it makes things go a little quicker. It also kind of keeps my hands from cramping up, so it's kind of handy. Just notice that it's perfectly capable of supporting the weight there, as you saw in the stupidity alert. Okay, so that's the power adapter. It's sold separately. It doesn't come with the case trimmer. Another accessory, or accessories, that come with the, or that don't come with it but are sold separately, are the chamfer and deburr tools. Okay. You can use your Camlock case trimmer to chamfer and deburr your brass. Now, the way you put this on, you undo your set screw there, and then you unscrew the cutter. One thing I'll mention about the cutter is if you're loading 17 caliber, the 17 caliber trimmer pilot comes with its own cutter, so you'll actually replace this whole assembly with the 17 caliber version. It's about a $20 item, so I didn't buy it because I don't load 17 caliber, but if you're going to use the Camlock case trimmer for 17 caliber, you're going to need the combination trimmer pilot cutter that's available for it. Okay, so to use the chamfer and deburr tools, all you do is screw it on in place of the cutter, and then you can use it pretty much the same way as you do when you're trimming the case. Now, you also want to do things in the same order. You put your case in loose. You move your cutter spindle forward so that it lines up on the, in this case, the chamfer tool, and then tighten your case. And then you can use it to chamfer and deburr your cases. Okay? This is the chamfer tool, this is the deburr tool. Chamfering is on the inside, deburring is on the outside. Okay? So, those are the accessories that are available. Hornady may come out with others that I'm not aware of, but that's what's available today. And that's it for our examination of the Camlock case trimmer from Hornady. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you learned a few things. I tried to be as in-depth as possible, so it has a little more information than some of the other videos I've seen. So, if you liked the video, please click the like button, and maybe even subscribe to my channel. I'll be putting out more videos soon. Thanks for watching. Take care now. Happy reloading.